Awesome. Okay, we are live. Shalom. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. In honor of Autism Awareness Month, tonight's topic is understanding autism. Do you say I'm sorry or congratulations? For those who don't already know me, my name is Ali Wiener Avraham. I am the Jewish Education and Early Childhood Education Coordinator at the JCC of the Lehigh Valley in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I myself am a parent of two young children and wear plenty of hats in our community as a teacher, educator, and support for our teachers and parents within our community. Now is usually when I give a quick insight to this topic and why it's so meaningful to me. This one really hits home. For those that don't already know, this year has been truly eye-opening for me. Back in the fall, my son was formally diagnosed with high-functioning autism. To many, he may seem like just another 6-year-old boy being wild, unruly, overcurious, talkative, or even nosy. His struggle is real. His inability to identify his need for the bathroom, his lack of understanding when kids make fun of him, his difficulty to adjust to change, his struggle with physical or gross motor activities, his rigidity, his quick responses that come off as rude and disrespectful, his repetitive behaviors or repetition of words that seems like he is mocking or teasing, and his difficulty connecting with people his own age all stem from his autism. After months of people telling me I'm sorry, Jess Mahler was the first person to finally say the thing I needed to hear the most. Congratulations. Jess has opened my eyes in so many ways, and I can't wait for her to tell us all about autism. Jess, you can unmute.
Hi, hi. Um, um, I'm, as I always say, I Jess Mahler. I moderate support needs autistic person. This is son Darius. sorry. I forget. Only person loud hug him is father. I'm not supposed to. um, 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 So yeah, before I get started, a couple things. I do want to thank Ali having me here tonight. And thank Liz Freer, Haskala helped me set this up. And um, I want to so I have screen share. I'm gonna bear with me a minute while I get this. Where's there's screen share. Screen share. No, share screen. Um, Desktop. Share. Okay, this is no. Um, I have there and that. What you? Well, that's annoying. That's. Uh, so I had things set up, but it's not working. So we'll just do this.
Come
Yes,
on.
yes. The damn thing is getting in the way. I'm sorry. I should have tested. I'll always test technology before. Yes. Okay. Okay. So first thing is but before I have a little magic trick want share. Okay.
No.
Yes. You like this. You this.
I'm just saying that because we've gotten used to you always doing this.
Okay.
Except this thing during rehearsal.
So give me a minute here, and I show you. Okay. Okay, thank you for your patience. Again, I am Jess Mahler, and I am here tonight to talk with you about autism. However, I'm not going to answer your questions tonight. I am going to answer the questions you do not know you need to ask. Now, what I just did, that is called masking. Masking is a skill that many autistic people can develop in order, that took me backwards, in order to better navigate a allistic society. Allistic means all of you who are not autistic. The people who came up with these terms, autism means facing inward, allism means facing outward. I don't know if I agree with those meanings, whatever, these are the terms we have to work with. Basically, masking, what I'm doing now is it's acting like an allistic person so that we can better fit in with your expectations and needs from us. Masking is, it's doing that again. Masking is extremely costly on a mental and emotional level. Doing this, it's kind of like running 3 to 5 math problems in my head all at the same time. So even for those of us who can do this, it can be extremely difficult and extremely wearing, which is why we can very easily end up in various kinds of burnout. Because it is so costly, it is very important that masking always be a choice. Masking needs to be something that an autistic person chooses for themselves, because requiring it of us comes at significant cost, and you don't know if we can afford to pay that cost right now. That assumes we can mask in the first place. Not all autistic people can mask, and even those who can mask can't always mask fully. I mask extremely well for short periods of time and in certain situations. Okay. If you're going to be ow, ow, owing, scooch and come back later. I know you're having pains, but now is not the best time. Okay. So I will probably be able to hold my mask very well during the presentation part of this evening. And when we get to the Q&A part, my mask is going to start dropping fairly quickly. So having said that, like Ali said, the theme here is, do you say I'm sorry or congratulations? But you'll see my little thing here says autism acceptance, because that's the term that autistic people prefer. You all have seen Autism Awareness Month everywhere. Autism Awareness Month, the term comes from Autism Speaks. We will be talking about them later. We don't like them. Now, like Ali said, we had this conversation. She told me that her son had been diagnosed with autism, and my response was congratulations. And people don't understand why we say congratulations. We say congratulations because we have answers. Oh! We have been dealing with this shit for years, not knowing what's going on. And suddenly we have answers, and that is amazing. And thank God we have answers. We can get help now. Now, some people really are happy to be autistic. Some people celebrate being autistic, and that's awesome. But even for people who hate being autistic, even for people who would stop being autistic in a minute if they could, getting that diagnosis, getting that answer, it's just life-changing, that moment that you have those answers. Unfortunately, as Ali found out the hard way, most people have been taught to say, I'm sorry. And one of the things we're going to be looking at tonight is who taught you and why, because Anyway, two other things before I actually get into the meat of this discussion. First, any other autistic people in the audience, as you've probably picked up by now, this is mainly directed to the allistic folks here, but please reach out to me later. I would love to connect. The other thing I want to touch on before I get into it is I will be using genderqueer inclusive language this evening. It is, of course, important that we be inclusive as often as we can and in as many ways as possible, but also autism and being genderqueer have a heavy overlap. Trans and non-binary people are 3 to 7 times more likely to be autistic, depending on which study you're looking at. They haven't nailed it down yet, significantly more likely. In a similar vein, autistic people are significantly more likely to experience gender dysphoria, which is one of the main symptoms of being trans or non-binary. And whether you're autistic or trans, it's not something that can be changed, and you kind of need to deal with it. If you have an autistic child in your life, please get used to the idea that they may be genderqueer. If you are uncomfortable or upset with the idea that your child may be genderqueer, talk to a rabbi, talk to a lay counselor, talk to friend or family. Get comfortable with it now so that if and when your child does come out, you can give them the support that they need. Acceptance is everything. And I don't just mean everything in terms of, making your kid happy. I literally mean this is a life and death matter. The autistic suicide rate is 3 times higher than the general population. Up to half of trans teens attempt suicide. And the biggest predictor of whether or not someone will attempt suicide is the acceptance and support of family and friends. That's the whole kit and caboodle, the acceptance and support of family and friends. There is, however, a flip side to this when we are talking about autism and disability in general, and it is in some ways even more horrific. At least 219 disabled people were killed by parents and caregivers between 2011 and 2015. Allie has a list of links to share. One of those links is a link to the full text of the Rudderman White Paper on media coverage of the murder of people with disabilities by their caregivers. If you have a strong stomach, you are welcome to read it. But brace yourself, it is rough. One of the items mentioned in the Rudderman White Paper is a mother who killed her son, her autistic son, when she realized that it would not be possible to cure him. Now here's the first problem with this. I mean, the second problem, really. The first problem is a mother killed her son for any reason whatsoever. But the next problem is most of us don't want a cure. We don't have hard numbers because there are no official surveys, because generally they don't actually ask autistic people our opinions, which is something we'll touch on a bit more later. But there was an unofficial survey done by called Autistic Not Weird. They had got answers from over 11,000 autistic people. Again, that's in the link list, and there's a lot more interesting information there about different autistic people's experiences, thoughts on being autistic, so on and so forth. But if a cure was available, only 15% of us would take it. That's not only 15% desperately want a cure. That's not only 15% need a cure. Only 15% of us would be willing to take it. Now, 15% of us would be willing to take a cure, and some people desperately want a cure. Unfortunately, a cure is a myth. At this point, given current medical science, a cure for autism is a myth. First off, they found over 102 genes linked to autism. All of these genes, or almost all of them, affect prenatal neural development. So if you're going to prevent someone being autistic, you need to do it before the brain starts forming in utero. That's our first necessary medical miracle. We're going to come across a couple others here. Now, once these genes, not everyone has all 102. There's, most people have 1, 2, 3, however many. It's just they've this many different ones that can cause autism in some fashion. But once the brain starts developing, we run into the issues of how the brain develops. One of the big ones there, why do I keep going backwards? One of the big ones there is called synaptic pruning. Now, synaptic pruning is starting when, around 36 weeks, the brain starts developing and you start getting synapses, connections between the neurons. And they develop up and up and up until around 2 years of age, at which point, in allistic people, the brain kind of goes, okay, I've got too many of these connections, let me start cutting them back. Autistic people don't get synaptic pruning. our brain doesn't cut back on those connections. So our brains have millions of synapses that allistic brains don't have. That's not something that medical science can fix. You are talking either find some way to trigger synaptic pruning in a brain not designed for it at a later age than it's supposed to happen, or you are talking about needing to find some way to do molecular level surgery throughout the entire brain and correctly identify which of those millions of synapses need to be cut. I mean, science has done amazing things. They've basically cured the plague. There's that song, ACD, you know, biology defeated one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So I'm not going to say anything is completely impossible for medical science sooner or later, but in our lifetimes, I do not see this happening. Treatments, yes. There are lots of possible treatments for autism, things to help the symptoms, things to help people cope better. There's one medication, 2 gene therapies, and a couple of very interesting studies on gut microbes that I'm aware of. And that's before you get into therapies and general supports. So there are definitely progress in finding treatments to help autistic people do better and feel better and have less problems. But cure, not happening. Just let it go, move on. Now the next common question after we talk about cure can't happen and how it's genetic is, well then, how common is autism? I never heard of it 30, 40 years ago, and now it's everywhere. Why did autism suddenly become so huge if it's genetic? The main answer is right here. This, you've got the DSM-3 infantile autism diagnosis. That was the diagnostic criteria for autism up until 1985. Then you've got the DSM-5 autism spectrum diagnosis. That came into effect in 2013. The big one right there at the top under the DSM-3 could only be diagnosed before 30 months of age. Once you start recognizing that people can be autistic and you don't see the symptoms until they're past 3 years old, you completely open the ball game in terms of the number of autistic people you are going to diagnose. That's not the only thing. If you look at the details here, and I'm not going to read these whole things, it would take too long, and frankly, I don't find it very interesting. And I don't think most of you would either. Yes. You find that in the infantile autism from 1985, they did not recognize lack of eye contact as a symptom of autism. They did not recognize flat affect as a symptom of autism. So many things that are fundamental to what people understand as being part of autism today, they didn't recognize in 1985. Now, in 1985, this got replaced by the DSM-4, then there was the DSM-4 revised. Things gradually increased in their ability to understand and recognize and diagnose autism. So autistic people have been here all along. It's just that the doctors couldn't recognize it. There is, people who know more than me have told me that there has been some increase in the actual number of autistic people over the past 30, 40 years. That like 90% of it is just diagnosing more people, but up to 10% may be actually more autistic people. We're not sure why. It might be an environmental thing. It might be that as autistic people gain more acceptance, more of us are having kids. Lots of possibilities. We don't know, but that is a thing. So it, you know, of course, if autistic people have been around forever, the question after that is, well, why don't we see them in history? And one of the things actually is we do. Oh, I skipped a step. Sorry. We are still underdiagnosing. In particular, poor people, women and people assigned female at birth, and Black, Indigenous, and people of color are severely underdiagnosed. The reasons for this vary. Poor people, of course, are less likely to have access to the medical care to get a diagnosis. y'all know about the whole thing with heart attacks, how 30 years ago they said women didn't get heart attacks, and then they found out that they just didn't know how to recognize heart attacks in women. Well, we're going through the same thing with autism. They studied what autism looked like in boys, and they wrote symptoms based on what autism looked like in boys. And then they found out that autism looks different in girls. So they're still figuring out how to diagnose. And I'm still hearing stories of women who go to get diagnosed and are told that, no, the doctor refuses to do an assessment on them because women don't get autism. Today. Hell, that's why my diagnosis came so late. My parents refused to get me assessed when they were advised to, because they were told that girls didn't get autism, so they weren't going to waste their time and money. In hindsight, I'm glad they did. I would not have liked dealing with a diagnosis in the 80s and 90s. But, that still brings me to not getting diagnosed until I was in my 30s. For Black, Indigenous, and people of color, you've got a mix of lack of access to healthcare and a lot of bias. I know one 7-year-old Black boy who is autistic, who his teacher recognized that he was a discipline problem in class, and rather than referring him for an IEP and assessment and help, labeled him as a thug in the making, and referred him, he was just a discipline problem who needed to be punished for it. 7 years old. The racism is still there, unfortunately. Okay, getting back to, autistic people in history, here's an interesting one for my fellow fans of folklore. Whoops, I went back. Why? Why do I keep going backwards? Yeah. Okay, for my fellow fans of folklore, here's a fun one. Changelings. Changelings are a standard piece of European folklore, a child who was stolen away by the Fae and replaced or returned. And when the child returned or was replaced, it acted differently. In some stories, the child was replaced with a Fae or with a golem type thing that they called a fetch. Or sometimes it was their child, but who had been kept in fairy so long that they were somehow disturbed or broken. This fairy tales tell it different ways. But you in all of them, you see the same basic pattern. A child who suddenly stops talking with their family or interacting with people, who suddenly stops showing affection or love for their parents, who stopped eating or ate strangely, who was sickly with weird behavior, and who often grew up to be odd or somehow different and not fit in with the society they lived in. This is your medieval autism diagnosis right here. It's harder to pin down specific people who might have been autistic historically, because often those kinds of symptoms don't get recorded. You all see lists on the internet, Isaac Newton and Galileo and Einstein and this, that, the other were all autistic. I can't take those seriously. Is it likely that some of the people on those lists were autistic? Yes, autism is simply prevalent enough that some famous people in history were autistic. But for the most part, we just don't have the evidence. The one person I do think we have solid evidence for was a guy named Henry Cavendish. It's called The Man Who Weighed the World. 18th century scientist who wore the same clothes every day, ate the same food every day, was lucky enough to be the son of a rich father, and so he didn't need to work. He spent all his days studying his scientific obsessions, and his only social outing was a 1-week meeting of other scientists that he went to. And to the people there, they would advise a visitor that if you want to talk to Cavendish, you approach him carefully. You do not look at him directly. You speak as if you are talking to a vacancy. And if he finds what you say interesting or worth engaging with, he will respond. And if he doesn't, you are likely to hear a high-pitched squeak and you will be speaking to an actual vacancy. That's pretty compelling for me. It's not definite, but certainly more compelling for me than Einstein. Okay. So next on our agenda today. Getting back to what I said we would start with, why do people say I'm sorry? I also call this the problem with the experts. And there is a reason that autistic people generally refer to the so-called experts of autism using scare quotes, because frankly, they scare us. For example, Brianna Segal was the director of the Autism Clinic at the University of California. She was quoted in a USA Today article as saying, "It is as if they, autistic people, do not understand or are missing a core aspect of what it is to be human." I assure you, I am not missing any aspect of what it is to be human. You might understand I'm not particularly a fan of Dr. Siegel's. She is still involved in autism research and advocacy. She is still writing books and articles about autism, and I still want nothing to do with her. Unfortunately, her attitudes are not unique. This is the transcript of an ad called "I Am Autism" from Autism Speaks. You may have heard of Autism Speaks. In this ad, autism is a disembodied, almost demonic voice. And I swear to you, this is the same as the Changeling story right here. I will steal your child. I will destroy your marriage. I will bankrupt you. I will make sure that you don't sleep, that you can't attend any public functions without embarrassment or pain. You can't cure me. I enjoy your desperation. I take great pleasure in your loneliness. This is autism, according to Autism Speaks. This is the voice of autism speaking to parents of autistic children. The ad continues with the parents speaking back. "To autism, I say, I am a father, a mother, blah, blah, blah. Autism, if you are not scared, you should be. When you came for my child, you forgot you came for me." Something's missing in this ad. Where's the autistic child here? This ad, the autistic child doesn't exist. You've got the disembodied demonic voice of autism and the family of the autistic child fighting over this child who has no voice. This is not particularly surprising, as Autism Speaks does not have any autistic people in leadership roles in the organization. They at one time had one single autistic person in a leadership role. They drove him away by not listening to him. Autism speaks. Apparently, autistic people don't. Now, these ideas are very deeply rooted in everything involving autism, research, treatment, etc. And that is because of this gentleman, Ivar Lovaas. You have a person in the physical sense, but they are not people in the psychological sense. One way to look at the job of helping autistic kids is to see it as a matter of constructing a person. You have the raw materials, but you have to build the person. Ivar Lovaas was one of the first people to formulate the definition and description of autism, who popularized it as a distinct, as it being a distinct diagnosis in and of itself, where before that it had been seen as a subtype of schizophrenia. And he lays it out right here. I mean, autistic people, in his view, are not people. We are some kind of absence of personhood. And as he was the one who started the research, wrote the first textbook, so on and so forth, his ideas have permeated everything to do with autism research, autism advocacy, and the fact that autistic people have for decades not had a voice in anything involving autism. So this is why people have learned to say, "I'm sorry," when they hear about an autism diagnosis, because these are the people who have been spreading information about autism. These are the people who have been writing the ads about autism. These are the people who've been writing the textbooks that your doctors and therapists use to learn about autism. These are the people who coined Autism Awareness Month. Now that's not all the fun we have involving Ivar Lovaas, unfortunately. Ivar Lovaas invented something very, very important to autistic people. You might have heard of it. It's called ABA therapy. It is the gold standard of autism therapies, and it was created by Ivar Lovaas as a way to build a person out of an autistic child. Right there, you should have all you need to know to get what I think of ABA therapy and what most autistic people think of ABA therapy. But we're going to delve a bit deeper so you understand exactly why this mess is such a disaster. The two main goals of ABA therapy are to make an autistic child normal and compliant. Normal, we talked about my masking earlier, about the cost it puts on me to present myself this normally. Requiring a child to be normal, therapying them until they are constantly acting normal. Lovaas, for whatever it may be worth, legitimately believed that he was teaching a child without any personhood how to be a person. I can credit him with good intentions. That's about all I can credit him with. His successors today, who understand that autistic people are in fact people, who still want to force us to act normally, who believe that if we can act normal, we can be normal, I have less patience with. I'm not the only one. In that link list, you will find the full copy of this article by Carol Millman. Millman does a very extensive takedown, not just of ABA in general, but of the organization that backs ABA and teaches ABA therapists today. But just highlighting a few things specific to the issue of normal. Quotes from Autism Speaks and Autism Ontario, Autism Speaks Canadian sibling, on the goals of ABA, which see increase language and communication skills, improve attention, focus, social skills, memory, and academics, decrease problem behaviors. And as Millman points out, they're teaching behaviors. There's nothing here about improving a child's quality of life, relieving anxiety, or helping the child cope with sensory sensitivities. It's focused on shaping an autistic child to behave more like a non-autistic child, even to the point of shaping the child to play more like a non-autistic child. I'm sorry, you can make us act normal, you cannot make us be normal. All this does is put incredible strain on an autistic child. Then we have compliance. Now, when we talk about compliance therapy, we are not talking about teaching your child to listen when you tell them not to touch the stove. In ABA therapy, when a child is given instruction, the instructor is supposed to enforce that instruction. Nothing else is allowed to happen until that instruction is completed. Nothing that the child says is allowed to defer, delay, or stop that instruction. This means that autistic children are expected to comply with things that hurt them, things that make them uncomfortable. They are expected to comply under ridiculous circumstances. The standard for ABA therapy is 40 hours a week. Who in their right mind thinks that you can ask any child to engage in therapy for 40 hours a week? That they have a smaller version, it's 25 hours a week. Those are the two official versions of ABA therapy, 40 hours a week or 25 hours a week. That's ridiculous to ask any child. And of course, at some point you are going to reach a point where they are too tired, where they are, hungry, thirsty. You can't do this. but you still insist the child complies. Well, oops, did it to me again. You teach a non-compliant child to do what they are told. You train them out of saying no. A compliant teen doesn't say no to peer pressure. And compliant adults don't say no to an abuser. Now, there will be people who will tell you that the ABA therapy today is not the same as it was in the past. I will tell you that's bullshit. What I will say is that there are people today who are calling what they do ABA, but not actually doing ABA. And that is because insurance will often only pay for ABA. So just because someone says they're doing ABA therapy does not mean that you should protect your children from them. But definitely, be careful there. We don't know for sure everything that's going on with ABA, all of the effects that it has. But at least one study has found that ABA caused that nearly half of ABA exposed respondents met the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. That is 86% more people getting PTSD than autistic people who are not exposed to ABA. So this is not just autistic people are more likely to have PTSD. There is a clear correlation between being exposed to ABA and having PTSD. Now, this is only one study. My general rule for psych studies is if I don't see it repeated at least 3 times, I'm going to take it with a huge grain of salt. Having said that, it is on the people proposing a treatment to prove that treatment is safe. It is not on us to expose ourselves or our children to a possibly harmful therapy just because they tell us that it is good. Just to top it off, that is a higher rate of PTSD than we saw in Vietnam veterans. Okay. I think, yep. Okay. I've covered a lot of really hard stuff tonight. And I know that a lot of this was not what you were expecting, and it's really kind of heavy. And I want to end on a high note. So before I wrap up and we go to the Q&A section, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to talking about being autistic, okay? Autistic socializing. I can't see all the faces, but I'm going to give myself a minute to imagine the drop draws, because I know you've all heard forever that autistic people are bad at socializing, that we are loners, that we don't like being around other people. Forget it. Autistic socializing is absolutely a thing. Autistic people are no more likely to be loners than anyone else. We just remember completely different brain up here. Completely different brain. And that means we respond to different social cues and we socialize differently, and you are being a brat. Sit back and stop doing that.
Okay, Dave.
Darius.
Okay, Dave.
Okay. So, very few autistic people have a chance to develop our own ways of socializing because we very rarely get time to spend with other autistic people and just do our own thing. I have been very lucky in that a large portion of my family is autistic, and I've been able to build a circle of autistic friends. And so I've had a lot of time to spend just hanging out with other autistic people and watching other autistic people spend time together. So this is not going to apply to all autistic people, and I'm sure there are things that I'm missing here. But I have in general noticed 3 main ways that we will socialize together when given the chance to do it our way. I call them parallel interaction, cooperative interaction, and the Lego conversation. So parallel interaction, you do your thing, I do mine, and while we're doing it, we share stuff. For instance, I'll be sitting at my computer scrolling through Twitter, and my partner will be sitting at the table doing Legos. And I'm going through Twitter, and there's this cool meme. And I'm like, hey, you got to see this. Partner comes over, looks at the screen, then goes back to the Legos. Few minutes later, partner finishes building what they're building with the Legos, and hey, come take a look, see what I did here. And I'll come over and see what they're doing. Or I'll do it with the kid. I'll be working on, I'll be reading a thing, working on a thing. Usually with this one, it involves animals. There'll be some cute animal thing. And I'll say, hey, come take a look at this. And he comes over and takes a look at whatever the cute animal video for the day is. And he's over there playing his video games until, you know, not anymore. It was when you were new to Terraria. He'll get a new tool. He'll get a new tool or a new power upgrade or a thing, and he'll go, hey, take a look at this. And I'll come over and I'll take a look at whatever it is and see what he's so excited about. And then I'll come back and I'll do my thing. It works. And there's cooperative interaction. We do a thing together. Now, newsflash, okay? You can interact with someone and socialize with someone without talking. You can just do a thing together.
How is this such a big deal?
Well, allistic people, one of the ways they prefer to socialize is they'll go and sit down at a table together and they'll just talk. And that's all they do is they talk. Talking is kind of central to the way a lot of allistic people socialize.
I'm pretty sure you just saw someone and speaking to themselves.
That happens. So yeah, it's, you know, this can be building Legos together, going for a walk together. One of my favorites, I have a friend who'll come over and we'll sit on this couch together and I'll pull up a webcomic on my computer. And we'll just sit here and we'll read a webcomic together. You know, you get to the point and you're laughing at the same time at the same thing. And that's just awesome. Kid.
Right.
I got you your fidget toy. Use it.
Right.
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 So the last one, I couldn't come up with a good slide for this, but I call it the Lego conversation. Now for me, a listic style conversation, it reminds me of volleyball. It's this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. What's that thing? People watching tennis? That's how I feel with a listic. It's too fast. It's too back and forthy. It's so the Lego conversation, imagine that a conversation is something that you're building out of Legos. The first idea that you start the conversation with, that's the base Lego, those flat green pieces that you build on. So you start that and you add an idea and you add a comment and you add a this and you add a that and you add this speculation. And when you're done adding your pieces in, you look to me and you go, okay, what do you think? And I'll pull it over and I'll take a look at it. And I'll go, okay, but did you think about this? And what about this other thing? And I think it's related to this. And then there's this, that, this, that, this, that. And I read a story one time and it's this, that, this, that, this, that, this, that. Until I've until I've added to this piece. And now we've built this big thing together. And when I'm finished with what I have to say, I pass it back to you. And maybe you keep building onto it. Or maybe you go, huh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. Can you tell me more about this piece? And you pass it back to me. And I start building further onto that section to show you how it all fits together and what my thoughts are and so on and so forth. This is where the tendency of autistic children, especially, to just talk and 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 talk comes in. They're trying to build these pieces together and the people around them get frustrated and cut them off and they're not able to finish their ideas. The pace is much slower. You'll hear me just even in this, even having prepared for this presentation, I'm stopping and going, finding the words to fit in. That's these conversations. So it drives me crazy talking to allistic people. I will pause for a moment, not because I'm done, but because I'm looking for the word or phrase I need, and you'll jump in. And I'm left feeling interrupted. And the person I'm talking with is frustrated because, well, if I wasn't done talking, why did I stop? much slower paced, much more spaces for pauses, for time to get your thoughts together. And usually when you have autistic people who have had time to practice this style of conversation, clear indicators of when someone is done. When I'll finish my piece, I will explicitly say, what do you think? Does that work? Or something else that makes it clear, yeah, I'm done, it's your turn. Taking turns is such a big, don't interrupt, let people take their turn. But when it comes to conversation, I'm not allowed to finish my turn because you all want to jump in. Whatever, you do conversations your way, that's fine. But can we do them my way sometimes too, please? That'd be nice. Okay. So quick recap. We hit masking and how costly it can be. The need to be inclusive and be aware of the increased chance that an autistic child will be genderqueer. The importance of acceptance, causes, cure, prevalence, the history, the problems with the experts, ABA, and socializing. I know that's a lot. Thank you for being patient with me while we went through it all. Now there was something I wanted to do and this isn't going, I don't know, we'll. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this up for a minute while Allie and I talk a bit. And then if other people have questions after that, we'll continue. The two diagnoses, the DSM-3 and the DSM-5, they were written by those same experts. And the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria is incredibly better than what came before. And it really is the best that we have today, but it still has some major problems. And for folks who are interested, this is a diagnostic criteria for autism written by an autistic person, which focuses on, because the current criteria, they don't show anything about the internal symptoms. It's all about what allistic people see, not about the autistic experience. So this is autism criteria if they were written the same way as any other mental health criteria, including internal symptoms. I'll leave that up here and people can look at it if they want. And I know that Allie had some questions. And if anyone else had some questions, I do have a cold, but I'm willing to keep going as long as my voice holds out.
Well, first of all, Jess, thank you so much. I don't know if you guys saw my face, but as you were saying things, I'm like nodding my head and I'm like, yes. And I know we've already spoken and you've opened my eyes in so many ways, but I mean, just that last part about the Lego conversation, I feel like I have learned yet again something else new and perspective for, giving that space and that time to finish those conversations, that feeling of, my son constantly says, you're not letting me finish, you're not letting me finish. But I never really understood what he was saying till now.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. I do have some questions that were asked on the panel, on the group, but before I ask questions, I do want to open it up to everybody else. If you have a question, you can either put it in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, you can post it on Facebook, or there's a feature where you can raise your hand and as soon as there's time, you can unmute. Or if you want to just wave your hand around, I'm happy to unmute you and you can ask a question. But while you're thinking of your questions, I'm going to go ahead with some of the ones I have already. So if you suspect your child may be on the spectrum, what should the next step be?
Honestly, for a child, the best step is talk to the school. Your child's school is required by the state to do an evaluation for an IEP within 30 days of getting a request. Your school has people on speed dial who can do an assessment. Instead of you driving yourself crazy trying to find what doctor do you talk to, how do I find a psychologist, your school has that information already. The other first thing you do, learn about autism. I mentioned that the links that Allie has before, folks. There's two parts to the list that Allie has. One part is references for all the stuff that I've had today, so you can go look at the originals. The other part is extra information for folks who are interested. There's a lot there. I actually have a list of over 100 resources. The problem wasn't finding resources, it was paring it down to a not overwhelming number.
Thank you. And I will post that list as soon as our session is done tonight. You guys can find that on the Facebook event, the Facebook group, the JCC parent panel. If you're not on Facebook, you could always reach out to me at awiener@lvjcc.org, and I'm happy to pass it on to you. Now, back to that question. What would you do if your child is not of school age or if you homeschool them?
My understanding is that in Pennsylvania, a homeschooled child also qualifies for an IEP assessment from the local school district. If they are in charter school, they can get assessment from the charter school. I have been told that in Pennsylvania, even if you are homeschooling, the school is required to provide certain kinds of support, such as an occupational therapist or speech therapist if needed. So you can ask for an assessment to determine if that's needed. So still then homeschooling, start with the school. If the school, if I'm mistaken about this and the school district can't help, or if you're dealing with an underage child, most people here are probably from Allentown, so I would start with the Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living. I've learned recently, thanks Rachel, that the Center for Independent Living does have a lot of autism support, including support groups for autistic people and their families. They will probably know where to direct you. I know, Allie, you said that your doctor was helpful. Try your doctor, your pediatrician, and if all else fails, you call the nearest psych place and ask them to who you should talk to. It can be a challenge getting a referral for a diagnosis if you don't have a professional already on board. I know one of the only reasons I got, yeah.
Why do you want me to answer questions?
Because I want to be able to tell them if you're willing to answer questions. So if people have questions for you, they know.
Okay, everything.
Okay. Side note, Kid is willing to answer questions if anyone has questions for him. So yeah, I mean, it's easier to get a diagnosis for a child than as a grown-up, but I know one of the only reasons I was able to get my diagnosis was my PCP recognized that I was likely autistic, and he asked me, you know, well, would you like, I think you might be autistic, would you like to try and get diagnosed? And I said, well, I think I am autistic, but I wasn't sure how to go about getting diagnosed. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to refer you. So it is, it can be a challenge, but start with the school. The next step is the pediatrician. If all else fails, call your county health department. I actually have a caseworker through the county health department who is watching tonight. Hey, Josh, thank you so much for being here. And the county health department can be, county mental health department can be incredibly helpful if you have the patience and sanity to get through the bureaucracy and paperwork to get to the point where you can get someone to help.
Thank you. I actually went through the school district. My son is homeschooled. So for anybody who is going that route and looking, the school district is helping. But we also did get help through a developmental pediatrician. And for those under 3 or even in PA, I think there's also for 3 to 5, there's early intervention and IU.
20, I forgot, yes, IU.
Have been able to guide you.
There is IU 20 up to 5 years old. I know because we are going to get my 5-year-old daughter an evaluation through IU20.
Perfect. I saw that there was a hand up, but I somehow took it down. If you had your hand up, please unmute and ask your question. I think it's Victoria.
Hi, good evening. So I found out about this particular event on Facebook, I think through one of the autism family groups. So I want to just first say thank you for presenting. But I heard a lot of discussion about ABA therapy. And so I have 2 children. I have a 7-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. My 3-year-old was presenting with delays when he was 10 months old, and like immediately the county early intervention program had came and evaluated him, and he ended up getting he had so many therapies all day, all the day. I mean, every day he had speech therapy, occupational therapy, feeding therapy. Anyway, this led us down a road of getting into a developmental pediatrician at CHOP, and CHOP followed him. And then when he was about 2, decided that he was ready to have an ADOS eval, which is apparently the gold standard for diagnosing autism, as far as what we were told. And so he was diagnosed with autism and then had a genetic study and linked to some rare genetic condition that he has that gives him other problems as well. So, but through that also, my 7-year-old, who at the time was like 5, about to enter kindergarten, the things that I was reading about autism made me think of my daughter. So we brought her to the same developmental pediatrician who referred us outside of CHOP to get the ADOS, because there wasn't enough time to get it before she started kindergarten, and there was concern about getting services in school and whatever. So I guess my question is about the ABA therapy, because we were really highly recommended to have ABA therapy, and I currently have a lot of ABA therapy for both children. My son does a program. It's that's more focused on getting him to look at people, so he can make requests, because he's nonverbal at the moment, and he doesn't even know what's going on during the day. So we're trying to get him to a point where he could tell us what his needs are. And my daughter, she receives services in school to sort of help her stay on task with the ABA work that she does. And then she also works on academic skills. And then the big thing was the social skills that I heard discussed, and like that this causes a lot of anxiety. I guess I'm worried about it a little bit, because for me, I think she's been doing really well with it. She's become more talkative, at least in telling us about how she feels, and being able to have a conversation with, I guess, the neurotypical, I guess, as they refer other children, so she's able to go to like birthday parties and like talk to children in the playground, and she's learning, that back and forth, the volleyball discussion, I guess, that was this talked about. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, I don't see that she's having any like pain with it, or that it's causing her any anxiety to, I've like seen her more like flourish, but I guess what are the signs I should be looking for to say like this ABA therapy might not be the best idea for her or for my son, and what's the alternative, because I would like to have them be able to interact with other people and be a part of society in a way that atypical neurotypical could interact with them.
Okay, for your son, the first thing I would ask is, have you looked into, or has anyone recommended AAC?
He's been experimenting with, and you're talking about a device, right? Like I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but so he was getting a speech and OT, like a joint therapy, for like a few years outpatient, and they tried with like iPads and getting him to look at the iPad to then they had symbols on it and trying to get him to point to a symbol for a particular thing, and he scribbles on the screen, like and then he gets it to turn off. Like, so it was really it wasn't, so far he hasn't shown any interest in using a device or a tablet or like a communication board. He goes to the IU20 preschool 4 days a week, and they have he gets speech there, and they try with they have a board that they try to get him to use, but he really doesn't like touching anything. So, and if he does touch, he likes to just kind of flick it with his fingers, so he's not really making a connection with any of the symbols so far.
Does he use gestures at all?
The most that he will do is, like, if he's thirsty, he might meander around the kitchen table. Or if he sees the cup, he'll just go and grab it if he sees it, but he doesn't really like tell anybody. And he doesn't have because of he has like low tone and all these things, so he can't like hold up without making a big mess and getting the juice or whatever it is all over himself. And so he may not even, like, he can't functionally get the drink without somebody helping him to drink it. That's like the most communication that he really has. He's been babbling quite a bit, so I'm hopeful that maybe he just wants to talk and he'll figure it out.
How old is he?
He's gonna be 4 in June.
Okay. So it is very common for autistic kids to just not start talking until 4 or 5 years old. This one, 4. Like, we could barely get 2 words out of him, and he turned 4, and all of a sudden we were getting full sentences. So if he is babbling, then he is not one of the autistic people who are entirely nonverbal and unable to speak. And if he's having those kinds of problems with muscle tone, and it sounds like he's got a fair bit of dyspraxia. I would definitely say speech therapy is the way to go, and not stress the AAC and just be patient, because he may just be coming into it late. I would not worry unless he's doing the same thing when he's 5. I realize that means it's an incredibly stressful couple of years for you and him until he's able to come into that. But keep up the speech therapy and just be patient, because at this point he's not outside of the norm for autistic kids. As far as your daughter doing ABA, the first rule of therapy is, if it's helping and the child is comfortable with it, don't rock the boat. It may be that you have someone working with her who's not actually doing ABA, who's just using the title. It may be you found someone who's managed to take the stuff that works from ABA and strip the bad parts out of it. I am extremely skeptical of such claims, but I mean, it's possible. And there is some evidence that a lot of credit that's given to ABA for improvement in autistic kids is just the kids growing up. It would be totally normal for a child who couldn't handle birthday parties because they were too loud 2-3 years ago to, through practice and exposure, gain the ability to cope with it. We develop coping skills, we grow, we change, our sensitivities change. So it's possible that the improvement you're seeing isn't from the ABA, but it's possible that it is. If she's comfortable with it, if she doesn't, I would sit down and talk with her about it. Do you like this? Are you comfortable? Do you think it's helping? Do you have any problems? If she is if you are able to have, if she's comfortable, does she tell you when something upsets her? If she tells you when something upsets her, if she trusts you enough to come to you, then go with what she says. Because just because ABA harms a lot of people doesn't mean it harms everyone. And maybe you're dealing with a type of ABA that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, she does. She's able to, tell me what, and she does tell me when something's upsetting her. So she hasn't really expressed any like fatigue or like burnout, like, or anything. So just so you know, they're very they are ABA advocates. Like, they're trying to get like certain bills to get people to get licensures and stuff like that passed, the company that provides the services. But I haven't found that they try to like get her compliant with anything. There's not, if she needs a break because she's like, so she's practicing math skills and she needs a break, like she gets a break, like and whatever she does during the break, she's doing, whatever she wants to do. If
Then
it's
they're
like,
not, then they're not following the board certification standards for ABA, and I wouldn't worry.
so she
And
doesn't
they may not
hold the
even
in,
be
so and they can tell, like, watch her and they see like she's getting like agitated or something, like, and she's not focusing. They'll be like, yo, go take a body break, and they'll tell her body break, and she goes and she does like whatever. And usually that's just like looking at pictures that are zoomed really, really close up to like the foot of horse or something, and then she goes back.
Then I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh.
There's, like I said, there's people calling it ABA that aren't doing ABA, and there's people who are trying to make ABA be non-harmful. And if she's comfortable with it, and if they're letting her take breaks when she needs it, don't worry.
Okay.
Worry.
Thank you.
Days that way.
I have a question coming from Facebook. What are some things you wish child psychologists knew or understood better when working with individuals and families with autism?
I wish they better understood the things that are problems for autistic people. There is so much focus on the things that the things that they see as problems are really the things that we see as problems. There is very little focus on sensory sensitivities. There is very little focus on executive dysfunction. There is very little focus on learning coping skills and the ability to manage some of the there's focus on making eye contact. There's focus on how can we look normal. There's focus on how do you cope with a meltdown, and not focus on on learning the things that cause meltdown so that you can help your kid not have them. It goes back to they're looking at the external, and I want them to look at the internal.
Hi, sorry, this is Victoria again. I just heard what you said and it really piqued me, because the therapies that my kids get, that's exactly what they do. So they've been teaching me how to recognize the things that would lead my daughter or my son, really, he doesn't really have any meltdowns or anything like that that we've seen. But my daughter, she used to, and I was taught like, what are the things that are leading up to those, and how do we catch them before they cause her so much stress that she goes into the meltdown. Good. So I just throw that out there, that at least from what I've seen, that's what, that's exactly what I was taught. She doesn't really have any meltdowns right now. She had sometimes I don't know, they call them microbursts or something, where they sometimes will revert back to having a meltdown about something, but she's been very good with it. And I know what to look for, to know, okay, she needs help with this.
Good.
Maureen, I think you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Jess, I wondered if you could talk a little bit, if you have any thoughts on like how to discuss with a child a diagnosis of autism. Like if you have a child who maybe it became evident like a little later, like when they're like 6, 7, something like this. And I think something that we are wondering about is sort of like when and how it would be a good way to broach this topic with a child, because just in terms of like explaining what it is to them. And I don't think you want your kid to feel like you're like sitting them down and giving them bad news, because it's not bad news, it's just news. And so I don't know, I just wondered if you had any thoughts or like resources on talking about this with your child.
When would be as soon as possible. The most of us realize by the time we're 5 or 6 that we are different, that we don't fit in, that there is something wrong with us. I have a couple of clear memories from kindergarten and first grade of being singled out for not knowing social cues that the other kids knew, and there was something wrong with me for not knowing them. This one was 5 years old when he asked me, why the other kids wouldn't play with him, and why didn't he understand what was going on with them. We notice young. So as soon as possible.
I
How?
don't remember anything like that.
Well, yeah, you're 10 now.
Okay.
How? You keep it simple. You say that you say that you know how everyone's different. Well, some people are a bit more different. Some people have a different type of brain, and it looks like you may have a type of brain that people call being autistic, and it means that you feel that you experience the world differently than people who don't have your type of brain. And that's a basic starting point. You can express it in different ways. We talk, how we took you to see the doctor. Well, the doctor told us something that we didn't know before. The doctor told us that you're autistic, and that means that your senses work differently and your mind works differently than other kids. And that's why that's why you've been having these issues that we didn't understand. And just make it clear to them that they're not alone, that there are other autistic kids, there are autistic adults. There's God in heaven. I have seen a disturbing number of people ask if there are autistic adults. I've seen a disturbing number of autistic teens and young adults say that they expected that they were going to die because no one ever told them that there were autistic adults, and they just assumed that you couldn't be autistic and be an adult.
The fuck?
So that is hugely important, is just making sure that they know that there are other people. There are other people like them, that you will help them meet other people like them if they want, and that it's okay to be different. Allie also had asked me about books about autism for kids, and I managed to find 3 that I would comfortably recommend. They are All Cats Are on the Autism Spectrum by Kathy Hootenanny, Benji, The Bad Day and Me by Sally Pla, and Too Sticky by Jen Malia. All Cats Are on the Autism Spectrum is a general introduction to the symptoms of autism and how autistic people can act or experience the world. It's a good all-around introduction. Benji, The Bad Day and Me, the protagonist, is the allistic brother of an autistic kid. And so that's good for introducing for kids who are siblings or friends to an autistic child, or for an autistic child to help understand how other people view them. And 2, sticky focuses on the sensory issues that are such a problem for autistic kids. And autistic kids often don't know how to verbalize or express these sensory. I was in my 20s before I figured out that my problem with a lot of foods wasn't the taste, it was the feel of them. So giving the kids that vocabulary early can definitely be a big help.
Thank you so much. Jess, at a later point, do you mind emailing me the spelling of those books and I can share it with everybody?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat. Hold on. So is it better to not even start ABA? It has been recommended for a family.
In general, I would consider ABA the last resort. There are a lot of other things that can help. Start with occupational therapy, start with speech therapy, start with you sitting down, learning about autism and trying to identify your child's problems with a helpful therapist, occupational therapist, caseworker. Again, your local mental health department can get a caseworker for your child. Josh has been hugely helpful for me. Darius has a caseworker as well who has been hugely helpful, sitting down, figuring out the problems, figuring out coping skills. There are times where I will say, yes, definitely do ABA. If you are dealing with a harmful stim, a situation where the child is a danger to themselves or someone else and nothing else has worked, go to ABA, because at that point you have to do something. But if you're just talking about normal development stuff and making sure that your kid grows healthy and develops okay, start with the speech and occupational therapy and a caseworker and go from there. There is, in that link list Allie has, there is a thing about alternatives to ABA that might give you more information.
Thank you.
That said, if you decide you want to try ABA, maybe Victoria can recommend her place.
Thank you. Maureen, I know I said you can speak, and I'm sorry, I think we got interrupted. If you'd still like to ask, please feel free to unmute and ask.
Oh, I did ask. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, I'm learning the hand motions now also. Did anybody else? I have a few more questions here, but if anybody else had a question. Elaine, sorry, Mom. It's weird for me to say that. Mom, go for it.
Hi, yes, Allie's mom. Hi. So I do have a question in to transgender and the concept of so many that are in that in the spectrum, and I understand that autism is not the term that's used, that being on the spectrum is. But if you never noticed the signs, I mean, you've really enlightened me to quite a few different things. But more importantly is the idea that about transgender, and at what point does the child realize that they're either non-binary or transgender, but begin with self-harm, like hurting themselves with like cutting themselves, and later into the drug and becoming an adult. So where does that, like, I've never seen that synapsis of autism with transgender.
The big issue with both is just feeling accepted and comfortable. It's trans people can realize that they're trans anytime from 4 years old up. I know people who are 70 and just coming out as trans.
Wow.
So if the danger comes in if a child or a teen comes out as trans and gets shit for it. If someone does not come out as trans, if they don't recognize themselves as trans, then there is not likely to be any significant danger. But if they come out as trans and they are rejected for it, or if they are told, look, I know you want me to call you Dana, but you'll always be my son. If they don't have, because it's a huge thing to come out and risk telling someone this, and then to not have the support of the most important people of your life, that's where the issue comes in, is especially going through puberty. Going through puberty as a trans person is very rough, because your body is changing in ways that are anathema to your sense of yourself. And puberty is very difficult for autistic people as well, because, well, your body is changing and changes are rough. And if you're dealing with puberty's hell for everyone. I'm sorry, it is. Puberty, everyone goes through hell in that time period. But if you add into that being rejected by your family, being rejected by your friends, being told that you are unnatural, being told that you are delusional, all that kind of thing, there's only so much that a teenager can handle without breaking, and one of the ways that they break can be suicide.
That's understood. And I appreciate all that you've said, because you've really opened my eyes to many things that I never even thought made any sense. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have another question that was asked much earlier on. Is autism genetic? If I have one child that was recently diagnosed, should I be looking into having my other children evaluated as well?
Okay, this is going to be okay, where to start? Yes, autism is genetic. We do not understand the genetics of it, so we do not entirely know how it works. There are things like epigenetics where a gene can get turned on in one person and turned off in another, and all that. So we don't really understand we know there's a genetic component, but beyond that, we're kind of all fumbling. If your daughter, if you yourself, if you have one child diagnosed with autism, and you see similar symptoms in another child, in yourself, in your spouse, it's worth looking into getting an assessment. But it does vary. My neighbor has an autistic son, and as far as we know, no one else in the family is autistic. She's not in touch with the father's family, so there's possibly something going on over there. But as far as we know, there's only the kid's the only one autistic. What happened there? Maybe there was a recessive gene that came out. Maybe it was some epigenetic thing. Maybe it was a combination of her genes and his genes that did something. I don't know. And then you have my family, where two of my siblings are autistic. I am damn sure my father and grandfather are autistic. They haven't been evaluated, but you can't know autism and talk with them for 5 minutes and not suspect it. 3 of my 4 kids have been diagnosed with autism, and the 4th hasn't been evaluated yet.
Who's the 4th?
Miriam. So it varies completely. Some families, it's everywhere. And some families it just kind of pops up out of nowhere and you're like, where did that come from? So yes, it is genetic, but it's some kind of weird genetic thing that we don't understand yet. So as you learn about autism, look for the symptoms, look for possible problems related to autism, and talk to the school about an IEP evaluation if you think it might help. Go from there.
Thank you. I have a question for Darius. So, are you up for answering a question?
Well, Mom, why I'm the one who told Mommy that he was willing to tell you guys that he was willing to answer the question.
Awesome, because I have a question for you. My first question is, how old are you, buddy?
Why?
Because I have a son that I think is probably about the same age as you, and my question will help me understand better if I know that you guys are about the same age.
I'm 9, 10, pretty sure 9.
10. You turned 10 in February.
Okay, so I'm 10 years old.
Awesome. So you're a little bit older than my son, but maybe you can still help me with this next question. Now, I have seen that sometimes other children aren't nice to my child, but sometimes he doesn't see that. Do you ever feel that way, that even though children might not be so nice, that it doesn't bother you?
No? I don't know, like I don't really pay attention to the stuff. I've barely I've essentially never interacted with people since quarantine. I have a bit of an unpredictable memory, and but it's been a year for quarantine about. So I can't really remember the last time I interacted with another kid, really. But as far as I remember, that's not really something that I've found happening to me.
Thank you. Jess, can I ask you to build on that as a parent, when you might see, or if you see things like this surrounding your child, other kids not necessarily being nice to your child, how do you respond? And do you notice it?
Excuse me, I'm pretty sure she hasn't really been around me as I'm interacting with other kids, but you can ask her.
There have been school things and club activities where I haven't been there to see, and so as he says, I would miss that. But we had some issues with some other kids who live in our apartment building. The one that stands out in my memory is there was this group of kids that refused to play with him. He would chase them around looking for them to play with him, and he didn't get it. He didn't realize that they were intentionally avoiding him. And then one time he brought out a toy to play with, and they all of a sudden surrounded him, and they basically took over the toy, and they didn't give him a turn to use his toy that they brought out. But he was so excited because they were finally paying attention to him and interacting with him. But after that, I had to say, no, we're done dealing with these kids. If they're going to treat you that way, no, you're not interacting with them anymore. If we see them outside, we're going in. Darius has a very, very small friend group. And it got smaller recently due to some unfortunate family issues. But the friends that he does have, for the most part, are other autistic kids who accept him as he is and don't give him that kind of shit.
I do not remember that.
That was when Miriam was a baby, so it was a while back. Those kids mostly don't live here anymore.
And those kids with the stomp rockets?
Yep.
Thank you. That was really important for me to hear, because I have seen where my child might be getting picked on. And when I discuss it with my child at a later point, he doesn't realize it and it doesn't bother him. So as a parent, I want to be mama bear. But at the same time, I also, and I want to protect him, but I also don't want to make a bigger deal or a bigger issue out of something if ultimately, kind of like Darius said, he didn't even notice it. Is it bothering him or is it bothering me? For safety, I would always step in.
You need to remember getting a
but Do I have to?
One turn. We were down there for an hour and you got one turn on your own toy.
I don't even remember.
Um,
I don't even remember seeing them any other time.
it's because when you came out and went over to them, they ran away.
I don't even remember seeing
Okay.
them any other fucking time.
It's definitely a fine line. One of the things that's looking back as a grown-up is looking back and recognizing the times that other kids played jokes on me or made fun of me that I didn't recognize then. And just because they don't recognize it now doesn't mean they won't be hurt by it later. So, yeah.
Thank you. That I needed to hear that. Thank you. Liz, I see that you have your hand up.
My question was, first off, thank you for all of this. I've learned a lot of stuff tonight. And mainly, I wasn't aware of the genderqueer autism correlation. And I'm wondering if you know of any youth groups or anything at that intersection that I can offer to my niece as a resource.
I know very little in the area, and I tend to avoid forums and Facebook and such. How old is your niece?
16 and a half, almost.
If her parents are comfortable with it, Twitter and Tumblr.
Okay.
Tumblr is overrun with queer autistic people. Twitter, you need to curate a bit. But I have a private list that I follow of about 20 or 30 queer autistic people. You can find quite a few of us. There's also a thing called Mastodon. That's its own social media thing. I would not recommend it to someone who is not already comfortable on social media in general, because it's this whole other thing where it's like 100 different websites all connected into this social media chimera.
Okay.
And so it can be pretty hard to navigate, but there are a couple of places on there that are specifically geared for queer people that tend to be very autism friendly and have a lot of autistic folks on there.
Great. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the amazing questions. They keep coming. And if Jess, if you're up for it, I'll keep asking.
I can, are you done? You can be done if you need to.
Done with what?
You were just moaning and groaning. You
Need to what?
go to bed. It's an hour past your bedtime.
Jess is talking to Darius. I will point out that Project Silk at the Bradbury Sullivan Center here in the Lehigh Valley has parent of trans youth programs and a youth drop-in that is pretty autistic friendly from what I've seen, working with a large quantity of LGBT youth in the Lehigh Valley. So.
I'm going to keep talking for a while. Anytime you're ready to, you can go to bed or you can stay up. It's your choice. I have not dealt with Bradbury Sullivan directly, but I did deal with Adrian. I actually helped a bit with some website and newsletter trouble they were having when they were getting set up, and he seems to be a very good guy.
there was a post on in the Facebook lead. I'm not sure if you just said it. It's called the Autistics. Is that what you just said before? As the social, it's a, sorry, I got a little one under the weather. The Autistics is a great advocacy social media account on Instagram and Twitter, run by a team of queer and autistic self-advocates. So I do have one more question that was posted here that I love this question. And I hope that you could help address it. Okay, deep breath. Okay. So we were talking about, I asked about what I do as a parent to help my child. But from the other side, if you see that your kid, okay, I know, that your kid is not being nice to another kid who seems to be autistic, how would you want to intervene? How should the parent intervene and help their child?
Thanks, Josh. I got the message. Yeah, it is important. Okay, checking back that I understood this right. A parent of an autistic child who is being mean to an autistic child, how do you approach this? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sorry, baby was cranky. Yes.
Okay. So one thing that has come up is that in many cases, the way autistic people interact with us when they realize we're autistic changes. But before they know we're autistic, we're just the odd weirdo and they push us away. And once they know we're autistic, they become a lot more willing to deal with us, which is shitty because people should be willing to deal with each other regardless. But it might help just telling your kid, look, he's different. His senses work differently. His brain works differently. He's going to act and do things different than you are. And, making fun of him for that isn't cool. You shouldn't make fun of people anyway, but you especially shouldn't make fun of people just because they do things differently than you do. But I would, talk to him. Find out, why are you treating him this way? Because let's be honest, if we're raising our kids right, they know that treating people that way is wrong, regardless of, what's going on. You say, well, why are you treating him this way? Well, he's weird. Is that a reason to treat him badly? No. Okay, so what do we do better in the future? And from there, once you reinforced it's not okay to treat people badly, then you step back into okay, you're right, he is different. Let's see if we can learn a bit about why. You've got the autism books for kids here that Allie will share. Make it, it's the autistic kids who have had, kids, I'm talking up to 8, 9, 10 here. Once you get into the tween and teen years, things change. But kids, if the adults around them are accepting and demonstrate acceptance. Oh, okay. If the adults around them are accepting and demonstrate acceptance, they will follow that lead. Explain to them what's going on, help them learn how to do better, and they will. There was a kid, I wanted to share the video with you, but it's been made private. There was a video of a 10-year-old autistic girl who can only communicate through AAC, through an iPad that speaks for her, who has some problems with dyspraxia. And her parents and teachers were just fully upfront with the other kids in the school. This is Cadence, this is what's going on with her, this is the deal. And those kids, her classmates, have become her interface with the world. When she's dealing with strangers, her classmates step in for her and help her deal with them better. She has very close friends and she doesn't have any problems because the adults there took the lead in demonstrating acceptance and inclusion. Excuse me, one moment, I need to get something for my partner. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. What did I just do? No, what okay, let's just go, stop. I did something here. Where is, okay, I did. I clicked something as I sat down that closed up the slideshow, I guess, which I probably should have done a while back. Didn't need to keep that going so long. Yes, Josh, I see you laughing at me.
I have one more question here. So the question is, what can you do as a teacher if you suspect a child in your class is on the spectrum, but parents are not open to an evaluation and getting the child the help that they need? What can you do as the teacher to help them? And it doesn't have to necessarily mean going to get that evaluation. Obviously, a teacher can't do that for the child, but what tools can you use in the classroom to help the child?
One thing that I would do is just make it explicitly okay to fidget and stim. I haven't mentioned stimming. I don't know. I guess, okay. Stimming is the repetitive things that we do. You saw me earlier doing this. Well, no, you wouldn't have seen me because I had the screen share on. Or I was sitting here doing this earlier while we were talking. It's a repetitive thing. It's a form of self-soothing. It takes a lot of forms. The rocking is stimming. Spinning is stimming. Tapping on the table. Darius, where's your thing? Your black and white thing? Here.
This is something specifically made for stimming.
So this, you just turn it. You just turn it. Stimming isn't something that only autistic people do. Allistic people do it as well, but you do it less often. It's a stress response. You ever, you get stressed and you sit there clicking the pen over and over and over and over and over again? That's a stim. So having a box of stuff that kids can come up and grab. Obviously, COVID, and even without COVID, you've got issues about, sharing a cold across the classroom or whatnot. You want to have something that's can survive being wiped down with alcohol. But, a box of things that a kid who's feeling fidgety can come up and grab. Make sure that kids know that it's okay, that you're not going to give them problems if they can't sit still. Set limits, of course. You don't want a kid rocking their chair, bang, 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 distracting the whole class. Break cards. Have, kid needs a break, they can come up, grab a 10-minute break card and just go sit in the corner, go to the bathroom, go to the nurse's station, just go somewhere for quiet and peace for 10 minutes just because they need to step out. What I was talking about with the autistic style socializing. Do what you can to integrate the ability for kids to have those Lego conversations into the class. Obviously, you can't do that all the time. You need to make the class holistic friendly too. But see if you can make space for both.
How do? What were you talking about before?
You're talking about a teacher making space in the classroom for all.
A bit, it's like a back a bit kind of thing.
I don't remember. You can ask. We can try and figure it out later. I need to.
Pages.
And just making information available. Look, the estimates on the number of autistic people is currently running between 2 and 3% of the population. It might be higher. If this kid isn't autistic, someone else in the class, someone else in the school is. So educate the kids. Take some time. Take a session during social studies or during literature. Work into your thing the essays by Ido Ketter, or who's the poet? There's a poet. I'm blanking. There are autistic people who've written stuff about being autistic. When you're doing science class, when you're covering biology and the brain, people brains don't all develop the same way. Here's one way that brains can develop differently, so that the class learns about this, and this way you're giving this kid information without stepping out of your role as teacher. And it gives all the other kids in the class information so that they can be more accepting and understanding of whoever they meet. Yeah. Oh, sensory issues. If you're dealing with a specific kid, pay attention to any sensory issues they have. If they have issues with loud noises, if they have issues with sticky things, and just try and watch for those things in class so that they don't become an issue. If you have a kid with tactile sensitivities, you don't want to be doing a class project with clay. If you have a kid with sound sensitivities, then the 1812 overture, or whatever it is that opens with canyons, probably not something you want to play in class. There's a big famous piece of music that literally it opens by having cannons shoot off.
Okay, what was the thing?
The 1812 overture, something like that. Is that it?
The thing not to do.
Don't.
Yes, that's it.
Why not to play it?
When you have an autistic kid with ear problems in class, like how Miriam screams when there's a loud noise. I would never play that piece of music around her.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, I think.
Any more questions?
Thank you. I do still have some more questions from Facebook.
Okay.
What is the best way to help my child succeed? What can I do as a parent? Where can I get the information to succeed as a parent of a child that was newly diagnosed on the spectrum?
Oof. Okay, here is the harsh
Amazing question.
Okay. You are fighting against the entirety of society in trying to build a way for your child to succeed. I cannot hold a job. I cannot. I can write 6 books. I can give this presentation and educate people. I can raise 2 children. I cannot hold a job. That is just a reality of my life. I've tried to make my writing a career. It's very hard to make a career out of writing. This is not news to anyone. I'm looking
to me. I thought it was your career.
It is my career in the sense that it's the only thing that I do to bring in money. It doesn't bring in much money. I have, working with Allie on this has made me realize how much need there is for more autistic resources in the area. And I've actually been talking with Josh about, can I make being an autism educator my job? We'll see. But the point here is that I do better than many autistic people in terms of my ability to function in society. And I still have not succeeded in terms that society defines success. And that is something that you need to accept. What you are looking for with an autistic child, you are looking to raise them so that they accept and love themselves. You are looking to give them the tools to be as independent as possible. And you are looking to set them up so that they have the support they need for the future, regardless of whether or not they can get a job or succeed as society deems it. Now, this does not mean it is impossible. I have autistic friends who are lawyers, autistic friends who are business owners, autistic friends who are successful authors and actually make money at it. It certainly is possible for autistic people to succeed by the dictates of society, but you can't predict who. You can't. When I was in school, I was the one that everyone thought would succeed. I was the smart one who passed all the classes, who did so well, until I completely broke and dropped out of school in the middle of junior year. And I only passed high school because my parents sent me to a special school that they had to pay as much for as some colleges, because I reached a point where it was just, the masking, the push to do things that I couldn't do it anymore. Now, of course, I did not have any supports. I was not diagnosed. I was not given the help that I needed. But that's me. And then there are people like Ido Ketter, who it should be somewhere in that link list, who is wheelchair bound, is nonverbal. Until he was 7, people thought that he was severely intellectually disabled because he had such bad apraxia that his gestures were meaningless to the people around him. And when he was trying to use the word boards, he pointed to the wrong word because he couldn't control his hands. He is a successful author who is on the board of directors of several nonprofits and is involved in a lot of autistic activism today. And I don't know how he's doing financially, but I would certainly consider him a success at this point. So you cannot look at your child right now and worry about success in life. What you need to do is look at your child right now and say, how can I give you the support you need to grow in the best way for you to become as independent as possible and to always have the supports you need. So one thing that you need to be very aware of is, they call it aging out. You hit 18 years old and all the supports you had disappear in a puff of smoke. Because there's a reason a lot of autistic kids were scared of dying, because they thought that there were no autistic adults, because people act like there are no autistic adults, including the mental health system. So that's your big goal. Your big goal is get them past 18 with the supports that they need. If you can achieve that, let them worry about succeeding. They're a grown-up. Get them a voice, get them the ability to communicate however is best for them, whether that's AAC, sign language, anything that gets them their voice. Get them help to learn how to find help. Get them a caseworker who can help them connect with other services. Show them how to do research, teach them research online to find other services and supports. Connect them with other autistic people. That will be their best support for some years, simply because we're constantly sharing coping tools, skills. Oh, you should talk to these people. This doctor helps. This one's not worth talking to. Get them the best education you can. That education may not be a college track education. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it for most of us, to be honest. But some people thrive there, you know. the best education that they can, which will give them the tools that they need. Help them identify the problems that they'll have navigating. What are their sensory issues? How can they cope with them? What coping skills can they use to navigate the supermarket? Because they're going to need to. How can they make friends? These are the things you want to worry about. And really, it's this. I think it's the same thing that any parent worries about. You know, I can't imagine worrying about what he's going to do with his life right now. Right now, I'm worried about him passing 4th grade. And once he's done with 4th grade, I'm worried about managing high school. And I'm worried about getting him out and socializing.
What about 5th grade?
If we can manage 4th grade, I'm confident of 5th grade. 4th grade and 3rd grade, the whole COVID thing. If we can manage these 2 years, we can manage anything before high school.
Okay.
You know, but he doesn't have.
You're forgetting things like calculus.
That's high school.
Ow.
He doesn't.
Algebra? Oh wait, we're doing algebra.
You know, he doesn't have enough of a support group outside the family. He really doesn't have any support group outside the family and his caseworker. And that's we've been.
And outside of my caseworker and therapists.
Yeah, but you know, building his support group, helping him connect with friends, build his own social networks so that he has other people to rely on. This is the focus right now. Get him out of the house, get him comfortable socializing, get him friends, get him through school. The rest is the rest. And I don't think it's different when you're raising an autistic child. It's, you know, step by step.
What were the steps you were talking about again?
Oh, geez, you want me to repeat myself when my brain's half gone?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Out of the house, socializing, school.
Okay.
I'm missing one, whatever.
Friends.
Yes, friends.
Thank you. I have another question here about masking. Does masking for a long period of time increase results of aggression or meltdowns?
It can.
She's saying that
It can.
her daughter says that she struggles to keep it together at school and melts down at home because she is safe there.
That is I know a couple of people who have managed to maintain jobs, and they come home from masking all day at their job and they completely fall apart and they can't function the rest of the day because all their function goes into managing their job. It absolutely can. So the aggression mostly is one of 2 things. It is issues with impulse control due to the executive dysfunction, and it is anxiety manifesting as anger. Those are the 2 big causes of aggression, in my experience. The masking reduces the more you mask, the less of all the executive functions you have. I'm going to be a wreck tomorrow. Tomorrow's just a write-off for me because
What's a wreck mean?
Like, you know, a car wreck, the car's completely wrecked.
Oh, a
Yes.
wreck. Not a wreck.
I talked with Josh about, you know, looking into doing more of this kind of thing, and it was, I can do this once a month. I can't do this more than once a month because of the strain on my executive functions. It's the same with masking. The executive functions, memory, impulse control, planning, prioritizing, organizing, time tracking, attention, focus. These are the executive functions. Executive dysfunction is when these don't work. There's some speculation about executive dysfunction in autism. We're not sure if the need to navigate the sensory issues and the social issues put such strain on our executive function that we can't manage, or if we actually have less executive function than allistic people. This is something autistic people debate among ourselves sometimes. But yes, masking puts a strain on the executive functions, leaves you with less executive function to use later, and that will result in loss of impulse control. It will result in inability to do things later, in harsher, stronger, less appropriate responses. I have found that executive dysfunction and heightened sensory issues go hand in hand. So when my executive dysfunction is bad, sounds or tactile things that I can usually manage send me through the roof. Yes. So the short answer is yes.
Thank you. We're actually going to have a class at one point on executive functioning. So if anybody has more questions about that, stay tuned for that. It is getting pretty late. I am impressed with everyone here tonight, especially Jess, everyone who's asked questions on Facebook, who's asked questions in the chat, or who's even unmuted and spoke out. Yes, with you too. I do want to share one last thing that Jess brought to my attention that was an eye opener. And maybe Jess, you could talk about it for just a moment. As my little one falls asleep here. But, the Windows blue screen.
Oh, yes. Okay. Everyone's heard of meltdown. But what people haven't heard of that is actually much more common, we call it shutdown. Shutdown is like an internal meltdown. Shutdown is when all the screaming happens inside our heads and not outside. Meltdown and shutdown both. What's basically happening for everyone who remembers pre-Windows 10, you remember the blue screen of death? Well, meltdown and shutdown are the mental equivalent of blue screen of death. The operating system has packed up. You need to restart everything. And any attempt to get it moving early is just going to let me see if I can find it. I actually made a meme about it at one point.
You made a meme?
Yes, I made a meme.
Since when do you make memes?
Very rarely.
Memes. I said since when? What's with all these death things?
I did a search for the word death in my files. It turned up a lot of stuff because I have a lot of books and a lot of stories and a lot of everything.
Things too. Why were there so many death files? Like ogre death, skeleton death.
Ogre deaths. Okay.
So ogre death.
I'm going to take a look at that later because you've made me curious now.
What?
What do you mean what? I don't know what that is. You've made me curious.
You should know that stuff exists.
I don't know all the files on my computer because a lot of files on my computer are related to words.
They did to what?
Yeah, I can't find it. If I find it later, I'll send it to you. You can put it on Facebook. But I took a screenshot of the old blue screen of death and replaced the words with, all the computer language, but autism focused, pressing any key will delay this process 5 minutes. and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what's going on with shutdown and meltdown is our brains are just completely, and you need to wait for our brains to reset before we can, but before anything can happen.
Thank you. That moment when you told me that, it really made everything, so many things clear to me. Because my son, sometimes he'll just start screaming, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" And I'm like, "Stop what? Stop talking? Stop moving? Stop breathing? I'm not even in the room. What do you want me to stop?" And I didn't really understand it until you made that analogy for me. And now when he screams, "Stop, stop, stop," I know that he's not directing it at me, and that he just needs a moment to process everything and I guess reboot.
Mm-hmm.
So
As he is better able to words, as he develops the ability to put words to what he's experiencing, he may be able to start telling you what he's saying stop to. But that takes time, and there's stuff that I'm still finding words for now. And that's what we really hope for the autistic kids today, is that by us talking about it and talking to autistic people talking together and talking with parents and talking with therapists and doctors, we can find the words so we can teach the kids so they don't have so that they know the words to say what they need. We had a problem with one of this one's occupational therapists. She's showing him face cards of different emotions. And every time he got upset, she was just, "Well, are you angry? Are you sad?" And she's showing these face cards. And I'm like, excuse me, do you have a face card for "I'm on the edge of meltdown"? How about one for "I'm in sensory overload"? What face card would you use for "my executive function is on the fritz and I don't understand what you're asking me to do"? They don't have the tools to teach the kids, and that's what we're trying to develop now. That's yes. Okay. I did get your clue there that it's time to wrap up. If anyone else has questions, you can drop them in Facebook, and or Allie has my email. She knows if you have. Allie is welcome to share my email with people who have questions. And I have Josh reminded me I did. Like I said, I am looking to see if I can kind of make a career out of this kind of thing, and I do have business cards and such that I just went ahead and ordered. So if this is not invading my privacy to come to me with questions. This is something that I am trying to spread the word that I am available to do. Please reach out, bring questions, let people know I am available. Yeah.
thank you so much for everything tonight. I know that I personally am going to rewatch this again with my husband without a very tired, now sleeping child. So I can get even more understanding of all the things that you've shared tonight. I do want to let everybody know that there will be another parent panel in 2 weeks. We meet every other Wednesday with different topics. Our next session is on April 21st, and the topic is, it was an older topic, but was switched out for the date. So we will now be doing how diet affects your brain. So it's going to be very interesting. We've got a couple of nutritionists that will be talking with us in 2 weeks on April 21st. Thank you again, everybody. The class was recorded and live on Facebook.
You mentioned a future one on executive function. Do you know when that will be for people interested?
I have to look back and see what date I have available and when my speaker is available.
Okay,
But I will definitely post the date. Please look at the JCC Parent Panel Facebook group. Everybody is welcome to join. It's an open and free space to discuss all sorts of parenting topics, not just related to autism, everything from developmental milestones to how the pandemic is affecting parenting and so on. So please go look for that, that Facebook group. I added it into the chat here and I posted it on our page. And thank you again, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
thank you for coming. Very much appreciate chance to talk to everyone. Thank you again, Allie. Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate it.
I don't understand how you
And thank you,